Oh, it makes me feel so old. In August of 1999, Coretta Scott King called me and said that the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta was planning an unusually large celebration for the Dr. King holiday in the year 2000. And she invited me to speak for that occasion. My wife came with me, as she has done today. My twin sons, Malcolm and Martin, were with me. They took pictures with Mrs. King. And between 1969, the year after Dr. King was killed, and 2000, that was the most significant Martin Luther King celebration I had ever experienced. In August of 2025, James Ransom grabbed my arm and said, "We need you in January for our Martin Luther King celebration." And as I sat here and listened to all of the speakers, as I watched the Deltas take over the whole room, as I experienced this interaction with our two young co-hosts, I can say without fear of contradiction, this is, since the year 2000, at the invitation of Coretta Scott King, my most significant Martin Luther King celebration in my life. So thank you for having me. I was a junior in high school on the day Martin Luther King was killed. And at that time, I had just gotten my driver's license. Gas for my car cost 34 cents a gallon. When I was dating my wife, our most frequent activity was going to the movies. I don't go to clubs, I don't really hang out, but I love movies. And it was affordable back then. To go to the movies cost $1.50 a piece. A postage stamp costs 6 cents. And for you young people, I'm sure you find this incredible and unbelievable, but TV was free. We had 7 stations: Channel 2, 4, and 5, Channel 9, 11, and what else? 9, 7, 9, 11. And if it didn't rain, we had Channel 13, PBS. We had black, white, shades of gray. You turn the TV on, and you had to wait about 3 minutes for the picture to show up. And if you had trouble with reception, you got a coat hanger and put it in the back of the TV and juggled it. A lot has changed since 1968. But what has not changed is that there are still people who are passionate, as Dr. King was passionate, about helping America to do what Dr. King said, be true to what it said on paper. Yeah. And I commend all of you for coming here early this morning, but I think even more commendable is sitting here through this marathon celebration. And I understand some of you are leaving here to go to a parade. I always thought Tallahassee, Florida was the capital of this state, but now I think Tampa is headquarters. For freedom and justice. So let me say that, as one of our speakers said in the video, things don't change by themselves. I'm always amazed that Blockbuster did not become Netflix. I remember going to the store and renting those CDs, and Blockbuster had this vision that you could watch your movies at home. But Blockbuster missed something significant, and Netflix came along, and there are no more Blockbuster stores anywhere. I think there may be one in Alaska. I'm always amazed that Sears did not become Amazon. Sears had a catalog, and you could order birthday presents and Christmas presents. You just called a number or send in your form. It was mail order, and when Sears showed up, you were happy to get your packet. Why didn't Sears become Amazon? The difference between those companies, those organizations, those communities that seize the future and refuse to let the future catch them by surprise is found in one word, and that's leadership. And the reason we celebrate Dr. King's birthday is not because Dr. King was the movement. Dr. King said that he wanted to be remembered as a drum major for justice. A drum major without a band is just somebody walking down the street making noise. While Dr. King was articulate, he was a spokesperson, he was a preacher. Without the movement of people who walked down the dusty roads from Selma to Montgomery and all over the South, without those people that worked tirelessly to bring about change in this country, without those women who are often overlooked despite the significant role women played in the movement, without the volunteers who never got paid, without those young people in Birmingham who went to jail, whose names are not written in history books and whose pictures were not in newspapers, without the people, Dr. King would not have been a leader, because a drum major needs a band and a leader needs a ship for there to be leadership. So I'm inclined to, 58 years later, resist the temptation of making the King holiday a King funeral. For a few years, I stopped going to Martin Luther King programs sponsored by churches because it was as if we were rememorializing Martin King. The King holiday has got to be about more than the biographical details of Martin Luther King's life. It's got to be deeper than describing how profound it was that as a young man he got the Nobel Peace Prize. It's got to be broader than the eloquence of his speeches. The King holiday has got to be a commitment not to the man, but to the movement and the principles that produce the man. Otherwise, this becomes an annual ritual of smiling and hugging and shaking hands and giving out awards and feeling good, and for the other 364 days, we're stuck in the past. And so when I first came to Florida, I came to the east side of Florida. I was a very young man, and I was so amazed that just like New Jersey, there's a Highway 95 in Florida. I wasn't that familiar with the geography of the country, and so it was just interesting to me that you can ride on the same street going from Florida all the way up to where I lived in New Jersey. And my pastor told me one time that there was a young man driving up US 95, which in Jersey we call the New Jersey Turnpike. And he was doing about 98 miles an hour. And the state police pulled him over, and the state police asked him for his license and registration, and he said to the police officer, well, why did you stop me? What did I do? And he said, well, you were speeding. He said, well, I was only going 98, and so the state trooper said, well, what do you think the speed limit is? He said, well, I saw a sign that said us 95. I'm just going 3 miles over the speed limit. And while I don't think this event is sufficient to honor Dr. King, I am inspired that all of us come together, blacks and whites, private sector, public sector, male, female, young and old. Come on, give us a round of applause. What I've been wrestling with over the last few months is the notion that this movement had as its theme song, "We Shall Overcome." And there's an interesting connection between the theme song of the civil rights movement and some of the founding documents and principles of this nation. Young man born in my home state of New York, specifically the Bronx, was known to be a kind of playboy coming up. In fact, he had an affair with another man's wife, and the man found out, and the man chased him down the street, and the young man who had that affair got hit by a bus and got his leg amputated. He was a scoundrel. He waited till he was 57 to get married because he just enjoyed women so much he couldn't hold a commitment to one. And he married a woman 22 years younger than he was, and this woman was Benjamin Franklin's granddaughter. And this young man grew into one of the founders of this country, and the same young man who was followed by all of this scandalous rumor ended up writing some of the most significant words that we are taught in school: "We the people of the United States." And when Governor Morris wrote those words, what was interesting about the colonies was that the average citizen did not consider himself or herself a citizen of the United States. They considered themselves citizens of the colony. And so people in New Jersey considered themselves citizens of New Jersey, Delaware, New York. They were citizens of these colonies, but somehow this young Governor Morris, at 35 years old, put pen to paper and, as it were, imputed on this collection of miscellaneous colonies this notion that we are people connected in the United States. We the people. It suggested that as a people, we are the sovereign, that government is not in charge, but the people are in charge, and government exists to serve people. It implied that we would not surrender to royalty, that you are not in charge because of your bloodline, but Governor Morris said, "We the people." And it became not only descriptive of our reality, but it became, in fact, aspirational, because we know today, looking back to the corridors of time, that we the people was inadequate in embracing all of who we were. There were people here before Columbus, and they weren't included in that we. There were people serving tea at the meeting where they voted on the words, and they weren't included in the we. The wives that were not allowed to vote or speak in some instances were not really included in the we. But it was aspirational enough for America to work from then until now to become the we, the people, that Governor Morris wrote by pen. So some years later, the people who were not a part of the we the people came together, and they decided that America was exactly what Martin Luther King had said, guilty of having written a check in 1865 that came back insufficient funds. These people who walked down the dusty roads of Alabama seeking the right to vote were concerned that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were not really being taken seriously everywhere. And these people, some of them risking their lives, others of them having lost family members to death, to lynching, they said, well, since we are not a part of the we, then what we should say is we shall overcome. And the challenge we have today in Tampa, the challenge we have all across America, is to answer this question: when will we shall overcome become we the people? And where can we look? What city, what county, what ward can we point to and say to America, we the people is now the culmination of we shall overcome? I believe Tampa is primed. I believe Tampa is growing. I believe the Tampa region has all of the requisite elements to become an example for this country of we the people. Anytime you can get this many people, this many executives, this many elected officials in one room to eat cold eggs, that's a good sign. But what will it take for Tampa to go beyond the parades and the breakfast? Well, in the first instance, if we're going to become we the people, there are some educational requirements that we cannot avoid. I've been to China. I go to Africa 2 or 3 times a year. And here's what I discovered about young people around the world. They all learn English. I was visiting the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, and I saw some young Muslim children, and I said to them, Assalamu alaikum. They said, good morning. I was in Haiti preaching through an interpreter, and after I finished, some young people gave me a gift, and I thought I'd thank them in their tongue. I thanked them in French. I said, merci beaucoup. They said, you're welcome. Then I went to speak at Oakland High School to a group of young people, and on my way in, I saw some young brothers sitting outside. I said, good morning, brothers. They said, yo, what up? And if we're serious about freedom, we can't simply sit back and be critical of what other people are not doing, what other people are doing to us. We've got to take education seriously and make sure our young people are able to compete with the world. That's why this emphasis from TOBA on young people is so revolutionary and profound. We're losing young people to gangs in some cities. We're losing young people to drugs in too many cities. We're losing young people to Instagram and TikTok in every city. And if we allow our young people to be more proficient in social media than they are in social graces, we will raise a generation that's incapable of leading this country. Dr. King went to Birmingham, facing Bull Connor. Andy Young made a strategic decision to invite young people to leave school and to be seen on national television being attacked by dogs and by fire hoses. Young people were the tip of the movement. Young people were the cause of the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. We cannot hold on to our positions and act as if all of our glory is in our destiny. We've got to make young people our destiny, and education is at the core. Which means that we've got to be open to change. When I was a child, I went to school and I sat in a class for 45 minutes listening to a teacher and watching her write on the blackboard. Children don't sit 45 minutes today. And if our educational system is based on a 19th century model and we're trying to prepare young people for a 21st century reality, no wonder we can't find people to run the technology and the other industries. In fact, we can't find plumbers. Have you tried to get a plumber lately? You got to wait 2 weeks and then they come just to see what's wrong and charge you $135. We've got 1 million shortage nurse. All of these folk in healthcare know you can't find nurses. And there's such a shortage of nurses, there's this new industry called traveling nurses, where nurses just go around the country, spend 2 weeks in your town, and the hospital has to pay them double. They've got to pay their transportation. They got to pay for the housing. We need to find 3 million fourth graders and begin preparing them now to protect us from not needing nurses in 10 years. But it takes leadership. And unfortunately, so much of our focus on education comes from Washington. Don't get me wrong, Washington plays a role in all of our lives. But to paraphrase one of my friends who has already been quoted, Washington is what Washington does. You can't wait for Washington to show up. And if the King movement and the civil rights movement taught us anything, there's some things we have to do for ourselves. I used to say to the parents in my church, as much as I'm an advocate for strong public schools, as much as I support teachers, as much as I've served on a school board, but the reality is schools were not built to raise our children. And if we're really for education, it starts at home. I learned to read and write in school. I learned to say yes sir, no ma'am at home. I learned trigonometry and Greek and Latin in school, but I learned to speak when spoken to, and I can't put my feet up on chairs. I learned how to live in community, and I lived that at home. If our families continue to get as weak as they seem to be, then our children will never be ready for education when they get to school. Dr. King graduated from high school at 15. Went to Morehouse College as a child. Had a PhD by the time he was 23. And so if we really celebrate Dr. King, we celebrate a commitment and a passion to education. And then economics. I bought a copy some years ago of Dr. King's final speech where the refrain is, I've been to the mountaintop. You know all about that. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. He said, we've got some difficult days ahead. We had no idea how difficult they would be. But in that same speech, given at Mason Temple, Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King also talked about finance. He said, open a bank account at Tri-State Bank. He talked about having life insurance. He talked about shopping where companies respect you. The Montgomery boycott that lasted 384 days was a result of people having financial discipline. And you can say what you want about the wealth gap. We can talk for hours about developing access to capital, but it does not start with public policy, although public policy is important. It starts with the individuals and us as a people, as a consumer society. If we are continuing to be consumed by consumption, we will buy what we want, we will beg for what we need, and we'll be broke forever. And I'm not throwing shade. I'm giving my testimony. I'm a Baptist. In the Baptist church, we license preachers before we ordain preachers. So you're kind of a semi-preacher. And when I became a semi-preacher, as far as I was concerned, in my mind, I was a preacher. And so I traded in my Chevy, which was completely paid for. And I bought a Cadillac, which cost me half of my salary every month for the car payments. Now, why did I do that? I mean, why would I trade in a paid-for car and borrow money that cost me half my salary? Because all the big preachers I knew drove Cadillacs. Metropolitan Baptist Church pastor drove a Cadillac. St. James AME Church drove a Cadillac. Pilgrim Baptist Church pastor drove a Cadillac. And so I felt like if I was going to be a real preacher, I had to drive a Cadillac. Never mind, I didn't have the income, the tenure, the members in my congregation. I wanted a Cadillac which turned into furniture, which turned into credit cards. By the time I met my wife, I asked her to marry me, but it took me 7 years to get out of debt before I could afford to be married. And my brothers and sisters, if we are not clear on the power of financial literacy, if we don't teach our communities the difference between wants and needs, if we allow people to ride around town in BMWs when they can only afford Hondas, if we're willing to pay 28% interest on a car loan and pay for a car that decreases in value for 7 years, it wouldn't matter what the White House did, what the Congress did, what the governor did, we will be in trouble. And so my affection for the Deltas has to do with the work we do together. We work on helping their members sit down and focus on using what they have. The only thing worse than not having what you need is not using what you have. A.G. Gaston was a multi-millionaire Southerner with very little education, and without A.G. Gaston, when Dr. King and the troops marched through the South, they would not have had a place to camp out. They would not have had hotels to sleep in. And they would not have had money to be bailed out of jail. Dr. King went to jail over 33 times. Have you ever wondered how did he get out? Because people with money bailed him out. So this idea of being mad at people with money has got to be extricated from our culture. I don't want to disappoint anybody, but there will not be a redistribution of wealth in the United States of America. And can I tell you a secret? I don't want one because I worked all my life to save it up to retire. Don't be coming to me talking about give my money away. No. Well, we don't want to redistribute wealth. We want to create new wealth among people who never thought they could be wealthy. That's why home ownership is important. That's why we'll never close the wealth gap as long as 75% of whites own their own homes and 45% of blacks, because when I pay you rent, I'm making you rich and I'm staying broke. We want our people to own a piece of the land. I've been to Dr. King's house. He didn't live in government house, and he lived in a house. Was raised in a house. And if all we do at meetings like these is critique the people in power, we'll fail to understand that Dr. King said that if you stand up straight, they can't ride your back. And so I believe meetings like these should motivate us to collaborate and cooperate to ensure that our young people have access to quality education and that we, in fact, build an economic movement that is as vibrant and visible and profound as the civil rights movement itself. And then, of course, we're concerned about ethics, which essentially means just knowing the difference between right and wrong. And unfortunately, right and wrong today have become just like my identical twins. You can't tell the difference. And at some point, reasonable people have to sit down and ask the question, is it right for masked invaders to come without cameras on their vests, without identification, and snatch people off the streets? Is that right? Listen, I'm for protecting the border. I've been all over the world. Every country I go to, I've got to go through a process to get in. I can't just walk into any country. But at the same time, do I want masked invaders with government badges and guns showing up in my community? At some point, rational people, independent of politics, rational people have to sit down, and the best way to discern between right and wrong is to ask, do I want that to happen to me? Because we have a kind of moral schizophrenia in this country. And it's masked by partisan identity. So if I'm with this tribe and we do it, it's all right. But when the other tribe does the exact same thing, we're ready to fight. And if I'm a member of that tribe and we do something, it's all right. But if the other tribe does the exact same thing, there's something wrong. Dr. King was not an angel. Dr. King was not infallible, but Dr. King was morally consistent. He was against violence by the Ku Klux Klan. He was against the violence of the Black Panther Party, and he was against the violent attack in Vietnam. He was morally consistent. You can't be against slavery and ignore the Holocaust. But you also cannot be against the Holocaust and want to erase black history from the school books. You can't be against police violence and be silent on domestic violence. The average woman in this country is not afraid of the police, she's afraid of the person she lives with. And so our ethical goals have to have some moral consistency, and I believe the kind of leadership that gathers in this place every year and has so since 1979, you are the candidate that I nominate. Tell America that we, in fact, are the people. To tell those that have been left out and suppressed and pushed down, your "we shall overcome" is now embraced by we the people. Whether you live on the east side or the west side, whether you live in the so-called ghetto or the penthouse, we are the people. And when we become we the people, we will be able to celebrate that every child had access to a great education, and when they graduate with a useful skill. When we become we the people, then revitalization and community development starts with the needs of the people and not the potential of the developer. When we become we the people, then we can rise above our political and our racial and our academic and our religious identities and be the humans that God made us to be. When we become we the people, no longer will we sing "we shall overcome," we will sing "we have overcome." That requires more than prose. You know, when we watch Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and these other networks, when we read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, when we keep up with current events, we're basically digesting prose. Prose gives us the facts. Prose describes our reality. Writers of prose are those who are seeking to inform us about what is. But when we read poetry, while prose tells us what is, poets have a tendency to inspire us to what can be. Prose will sometimes be discouraging, but poetry is designed to be encouraging. Prose is focused on accuracy, but poetry is focused on potential. Dr. King, when he came to my town, I was a teenager, he went from prose to poetry. He was talking to the adults. He was describing all of the challenges of the civil rights movement. He talked about fair housing. He talked about the war in Vietnam. And it was almost as if the young people were sitting over here and he could tell we weren't listening because he was just another preacher to us. So he switched from prose to poetry and said to the young people, including myself, he said, "Let me tell you something my grandmother taught me." He said, "If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are." See, that's good poetry. There's another poem that I love because we sang this at my high school graduation. When you walk through a storm, keep your head up high. And don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storms, a golden sun and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind. Walk on through the rain, though your dreams are tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never, ever walk alone. My brothers and sisters, there is a poem that I like in the Bible that says, "Weeping may endure for a night." This is poetry. But joy comes in the morning. So I want you to leave here with a poem on your heart, a poem in your mind. You can get all the prose, all the data, all the statistics from the news media. But I came here as a preacher to leave you with a poem that suggests there's a bright side somewhere. We sang, this young genius sang this beautiful song written by James Weldon Johnson, 1899, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." And we were there, lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. I saw everybody singing that song. And then, much to our surprise, he went on to verse 2. God of our weary years, And after verse 2, she sat down. I was disappointed. I was hurt because we need verse 3 today more than we've ever needed verse 3 before. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on our way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever on the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine and the Hennessy and the weed, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. God bless you. Take that.